All right, so let me give you a little overview of how this API works. We are on, I can't see because I have this thing over it. We are on the spacedevs.com, and I went to the APIs, which seems like that's an appropriate place to go. And then I went to launches, and I am going to documentation because these are the API I want us to use. So I'm going to click on documentation and kind of hem and haw while I'm on a slow internet connection here. It should land on this page. It's just taking a while to do that. And so the first thing I want to bring your attention to is at this top part where it talks about how to use this API. Take the time to read this line right here. And it says that the API is free to use, but is subject to rate limiting, 15 calls per hour. So please use this as the API testing call rather than the normal launch library. So, and the only difference is, and I'll show you this in a moment, is the two dev here. So instead of ll.thespacedevs.com, we also have this .dev, and that's to prevent the rate limiting. We're not getting absolutely live data, but we certainly get test data. So from there, what I want you to do is scroll down, and hopefully I have a search here so I don't have to scroll. And you're going to scroll down to launches because this is where I want us to be playing from. And if I click on launches, it gives me a bunch of information about how to use this particular API. And it's not really crystal clear on how to use this, so I'm going to walk you through this. So the first thing I want you to do is come down here to see where it says try it out. And I'm going to click on try it out because otherwise these options don't become available. Then it says cancel. Now these are extra parameters, extra things that we can send to the API in order to filter out our data. But right off the bat, I'm going to ignore the filters. I'm going to leave these all blank, and there's a lot of them. And I'm going to scroll until I get down to, takes a bit, there's a lot of optional parameters that we can add to our URL. I'll show you that in a minute. Eventually, I'm going to get here, and now I have available execute. Now, execute wouldn't have been available if I didn't do that try it out up above. So I'm going to click on execute. And what execute is going to do is actually show me the API and how it works. So it shows me that I can, in order to just do basic launches, I can use this URL, and that's the one we're going to use in our HTTP request. And if I put that URL in a browser, then I should be able to see the live data that is going to be sent back to me. So this isn't the actual JSON file, unfortunately, but it does give me a visual of what that JSON I'm going to get back looks like. And so now I have an ability to look over it and kind of get an idea of what the data is that I'm going to get back that I have to figure out how to parse through. There's a lot of data here. So what I asked you to do is I asked you to try some parameters. Try to utilize some of these parameters. For example, one that I mentioned is limit. And so, or if I didn't mention it, I'm mentioning it now. So if I scroll up here and I find limit, it says number of results to return per page. Well, we just saw that we got a whole bunch back on that last API JSON. So I'm going to put 4 here just to see what happens. So now that I have a value as one of my filtering or parameters, I'm going to scroll back down to the bottom here, back to that execute, and I'm going to clear, and I'm going to execute again. And hopefully, there we go. It thinks about it. I guess I'm on a slow internet connection. You're going to see my revised URL because now I have a parameter. I have some optional data that I can send to it. And so before we just had this 2, 3, and launches, and that returned a whole bunch of data. But now we're adding additional parameters. So we have this query string, which is going to send key value pairs and a GET request to the server. Notice here that this has LL. So remember, when we're going to put this into our assignment, if you don't put DEV here in front of that LL, you're only going to get 15 chances per hour. Otherwise, it's going to give you no data back. So make sure you put the dev in there. But for the moment then, I'm going to take this URL with the parameter that I just added, and I'm going to put it in a URL to see what kind of data I get back. And what you should see is that the data I'm getting back is now limited to 4 returns. So now I'm just getting 4 launches as opposed to the 20. Or I think it was 20, but I didn't bring that up in the conversation. I just think that from the past. I'm not positive. Anyway, so I asked you to try and find one other parameter that you might want to also add. And when you add that parameter, you can do just like I did a moment ago, where you can put in something here. You might have to look at the JSON data that got returned to figure out what parameter it is that what value you might have to put in. But I'll let you play around with that. Some of them give you clues. So at any rate, so then you test it with the execute down below. And now you've got a query string that's going to have not only a question mark limit equals 4, but it should also have an ampersand, which means I'm also adding another parameter, and then your parameter key equals and the value. So that's what I'm asking you to add on to, just to kind of play around with and get comfortable with the idea of not only do I have an API, which is this basic call, but I can add additional information or parameters to attach to this API in a query string as a GET request, because it's going in the URL, and so that I can get some additional data. So that's what I'm hoping for on this assignment.